Okay, in this video we'll be looking at the file structure for a project with the files and folders PDS typically creates, and then the ones I use as standard on all projects regardless of size or complexity. So this project is an actual development of 250 dwellings, which are these yellow boxes spread out throughout the site. At the entrance we have a new roundabout that leads to the main spine road running through the site. There's about 10 secondary roads and about 8 stub roads and turning heads. To the south we have a couple of attenuation basins with their own maintenance roads, and I talked about a pumping station with a couple access roads and some footpaths, which I've done as roads as well. Now you may be thinking that we went overboard with the use of roads for things like footpaths, and you could have done them as 3D lines or turning heads, but this gets a bit into how you set up drawings, and there's different ways to do things. There's some people I know that do retaining walls as roads purely for the setting of aspects, so it really comes down to personal preference as you learn PDS and decide how you want to set things up. So the first thing we do is we have this folder, and it saves everything in it as you start working on a project, and all the drawings and all the backup files and issue drawings and their backup files and XREFs and everything else. And then you also have potentially other disciplines within your company saving things as well, so it can just get into a right mess. So what we do, first things, create a folder. We're going to put everything in it so that it's always in this one folder. And when I do mine, I simply just call it modeling, and it's saved right underneath the civils folder. And to give you a size of how many files can be created in the process of working on a project, especially when you get into the more later stages like the tender, where you definitely have lots of revisions to drawings, different flow models and everything else like that. You're going to hit a lot of files, and in this case, if we take a look how many files are actually created for this, it's over 1,700 files that have been used by PDS and ourselves to create this model and to refine it and make changes to it as the design has progressed. So to have all these files really loose, it can be a really nightmare, and you could be forever just trying to scroll up and down trying to find stuff. And if you take that extra time and you multiply it every single time you have to look for a file, whether it's a road template they're going to add on, whether it's bringing in a new drawing to update this, whether it's exporting out and you're going to supersede a drawing, whether it's going to be looking for the DBU file, it's just every single time you tack on extra time because it's not organized will really quickly add up. And so we have that folder, we're going to save everything, and it's a good way, as always, when you're setting these things up, you want it easy so that anyone helping you doesn't have to keep asking where is this, and also when you're on leave, someone can come in, work on it, sort it out, so you're not left with a whole bunch of stuff to do when you come back, because no one could find out what the hell was you're thinking when you set up the project. So it's good just to put everything on that location. So the first file that PDS uses is this DBU file, and you can't rename it, and you can move it, but it's always meant to be in the parent directory, and everything comes after that. So just leave it there. And that DBU file, that sets the measurements for the file. So it's your horizontal distance, whether it's in meters, or vertical distance, whether it's in meters. It's your speed, liters a second, meter a second, whatever. So that's always those parameter files, those units of measurement. So that's how it's set. And so, like I said, you can't rename it and you can move it, but once it's there, theoretically, you shouldn't have to touch it. So don't bother moving it. It's just wasting time. Now the next thing that we can look at is these parameter files. Now when you go through the different modules, whether it's the drainage or the road or private drainage, PDS will have these parameter files, and those do things like what is the information that's displayed underneath the long section, in what order. So is it ground levels, chainage, center line, or is it chainage, ground level, then road or center road alignment, or maybe it's the spacing, maximum spacing between manholes. If you have it as adaptable drainage, if you put it at 100 meters, it'll know that's too far and it'll snap it back to 75 meters, which is the usual maximum distance. So that's those files, and it always ends in parameter. The only difference is the prefix. So in this case, we have D for drainage and we have R for road. So those are those parameter files. And in all honesty, when you have your PDS project file folder template, those will already be in there, and you can tweak these. I'll get more into that and when we go into the various different modules. But if you tweak them in that, because maybe you want the minimum distance between manholes to be lesser because you want to have nodes between points on a drainage system, by changing that in your template folder and you bring it into this, it's already sorted out, and again, you don't have to touch it. And if you don't have to touch it, why bother renaming it? Why bother moving it around? It's just leave it there. No point wasting time. And if you do move it, if you do move it into another folder, PDS will just create a whole new parameter file directly into that main folder. So yeah, just don't bother touching it. Now the next thing I would say is that it does create some other PDS files that are in this folder. I won't name them all because it can get rather quite tedious, but like one other one here, we have a JNC file. That's for your junctions. So that's one that PDS automatically creates. But yeah, there's other ones that it sometimes creates, but those are the more common ones. And then the other ones that get created, excuse me, are your PDS DGM files. You could put these into a subfolder. I normally don't. I just have one there, and if I have to supersede it, I move it into the superseded folder. But the PDS file, that is your drawing, if you like. That contains all your line work. That contains all the 3D information, where you draw your drainage, before bringing it into Flow to do the actual modeling, running the storm events. So that contains all the information there used to create that file. And the DGM, that's the file, that's the surface mesh. So what I do is I have an existing PDS file, and that's got all the existing topo in it, and that's all the information that's there currently on the site. And then I'll have an existing DGM file, and that's the surface. If you walked on that surface that's in this computer, that's exactly the same surface you'd be walking if you walked around on site. And I have two of them. I have one that ends in GL, which is ground level, and FL, which is formation level. And that simply is the level of the ground once you clear out all the stuff. So you clear out all the existing concrete, clear out all the paved asphalt roads, surface materials, you clear out all the paving slabs, whatever. That's the ground level you have left over. And then I have the same three files, but for the proposed site. So the first one is the existing site .pds, and then you have your proposed site .pds. And your proposed site, that's what it will be like once it all gets built. And that has all your proposed road levels in it. That has all your proposed slabs in it. Can get more into detail about these. I'll get more into that when we do the ground modeling video, but for the time being, what you need to know is you have your PDS files for your existing proposed site, your DGM files for existing and proposed ground level and formation levels, and that's saved there. So that's what those are. If we come to this folder, this is the build-up folder. So when you're doing your ground model, you can assign ground areas of your ground model to a zone, and those zones will be your asphalt road, your concrete slab, your flag paving, whatever it is. That's the pavement that's there, and the same applies for your proposed site, your paving that you're going to build. And so what you do is you have two files. The first one is all the materials that are used to create the paving. So your type 1 material, your capping, your concrete, your asphalt, your sand, your block pavers, your voided subbase if it's permeable paving. And then this file, that's your build-ups. So in this, if you go into it, you see asphalt road, and you see it's got asphalt with type 1 material and then capping, because maybe it's a bad site with crappy soil in it. If you went to your concrete slab for your service yard, you would have your 200 mil concrete with type 1 subbase, and then you maybe have your porous paving, block paving. So you'd use your block paving, your sand, your voided subbase, and a bit of capping, 6F2, whatever. Those will all be in groups, and you assign the depths to them so that when you compare your ground level DGM and your formation level DGM, you can get the volumes of all the different materials, and it helps with getting the volumes of your cut and fill exercise. Again, go into this when we go into your build up videos and your kind of fill build up videos. But the main thing you know is that you always have this folder called buildups, and that's where you edit your materials and your construction depths for your different paving areas. And you could rename it, you could move it to a different location, but if you do, PDS will automatically create a folder called buildups, and it'll automatically create it in this location because that's where it always drops it. So there is no point to move it, there is no point to change the name, just leave it as is. And again, I have mine set up with all the typical materials, all your typical road construction, build-up constructions, saved as a template in my PDS template folder. So when I bring this in, it's all set up, it's all organized. I generally don't have to touch it, but that's what that is for. So it's the more setup you do at the beginning, the easier life will be. And so if we ignore these first 6 folders, all these other folders, these are all your roads. Basically, whenever you create a road in PDS, it creates a couple files. It'll create a subfolder for your road using the name you gave it, and it'll put a couple files in there. You can all open them up, but I'll look like a bunch of mess because it's coded somehow. Don't know. But it'll just come out in Chinese characters or Sanskrit letters. But it's contains all your vertical, your horizontal geometry, your crossfalls, your carriage widths. It's got all the stuff that is used to create that road. So it creates a folder for each one of these roads. So that in this case, we got 18 roads by the time you have all your roads, even for your basins. So it's got 18 folders for it. So there's a lot of folders in here. And that's why I've got these first 6, and I named them 1 to 6. So basically that's, it's like all these subfolders that it's created, you're never going to go into those. That's something that PDS does in the background. You don't touch it. And so I name mine. I put the ones I need to help me do the stuff at the very top, and I number them 1 to 6, so that whenever I go into it, those 6 that I need, they're always at the top. That's why I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so let's take a look at the 6 files. Now, the first one is the CAD import, and basically I must admit I use PDS standalone. You can use PDS in CAD version, depends on what your preference is and such. But the one important thing is with PDS standalone version, you're limited currently in the number of layers you can have. It's 510, and of those 510, PDS uses maybe about half, I think it is, maybe. I'm not too sure exactly, never bothered to count. With pre-assigned layers with different names. And you could put stuff on those layers if you want when you're using PDS. I'll go into that later in another video. But basically, it causes problems, so you're better off not doing it. And so you need to be more careful with your files in terms of not having too many layers in them. Whenever we need to edit a file to bring it into it, we take it and we drop it into this because we want to purge it all out for that reason. And even if you use the PDS and CAD version, it still would be good to have this folder because the architect's drawings usually have lots of hatching and coloring on it and a whole bunch of other information that's not really useful. You don't need to know that there is a bin, you know, in the middle of this green space. You don't need to know that I don't know. You don't need to know that there's a bench here if you're trying to run a sewer along an area. You really don't need to know that. There's just so much extra information that you don't need. And even if you say, well, I'll just use an XREF. Well, even though using an XREF, sometimes you want to edit it by maybe putting in rows center lines because they didn't put in rows center lines, and you're going to do the row alignment. And you don't want to mess up those XREFs because it could end up messing up your drawings. So instead of trying to use that information that's in the XREFs and making sure that you don't delete something off that some other drawing needed, or add something in that shows up in all the other drawings that you didn't want to add it in and causes problems because someone prints it out and says, what the hell is all these circles and lines for? Well, that wasn't on that. The best thing to do is you have a folder for your PDS, any drawing you're going to use, you just bring it into here, edit how you need it, and bang, you bring it into your stuff and you do the design. So that's what that is for. And it's also really good because if you're hitting a deadline and you need help, you want to have it standardized. So you say to someone, I need a topo survey because we got a new topo and it needs a bit of sorting out. Can you edit it? And they say, sure, I'll edit that. And then we'll put it and both of you know that that drawing has to go into that folder and it's going to be edited. And when he says the drawing is done, I've fixed it, you know what folder to go to get that drawing to bring into your PDS file. You're not there scratching your head trying to call him up to ask him where the hell the file is and he's off somewhere else trying to do something else, or you keep calling him and he's away from his desk. It's always in the same spot. Everyone knows it. Nice and simple. Crack on with it. And then the next one is the export file. So what happens is, again, this is good to have even if you're in the PDS CAD version, because more than likely you're going to have that information spread out through different drawings. You're not going to have your PDS file, your PDS drawing with everything in it. So you'd end up exporting out the manual schedules onto another drawing, the profiles onto this drawing, and contours onto these 12 different drawings. So what we do is we just say, right, the manual schedule has changed. I'm going to export it out, drop it into this location. I'm going to say, hey, you, manual schedule needs edit, needs updating. I've exported it out, and they know exactly what folder to go to. There's none of this, well, what project, where's the folder? What information is it? Again, and in these two folders, I have superseded folders, so that to help keep them from getting too full, I move them into the superseded folders. And that way, because even though I put date stamps on the files, some people still ask, is this the latest version? So it's this way of, it's pretty pathetically obvious, but it does get asked. So this way I move it into those superseded folders to help keep it tidy. So those are those ones. You have two to bring stuff into PDS and one to ship it all out to put into the various drawings. The next one we have here, this is flow. So some people like to put the flow models in with the calculations. Some people want to have maybe another location. Sometimes it gets saved with the flood risk reports as such. I keep it within this. The reason for that is when you're doing the ground levels design or you're doing your drainage design, there's be various times where you think, shoot, the ground should fall away, that should fall over to here, because it'll be easier to drain it because I don't have to put in an extra 4 runs just to get it around and drain it. Or you might say, oh shit, that ground is too steep. I need to adjust the line work for it, flatten it out, and then regenerate your ground model, and then update your cover levels of your PDS file. So you're going back and forth between the two, and happens quite a lot as you refine that design. I mean, it should happen quite a bit, because if you're not, then you're not really refining your design to the optimal design. You're just doing something that looks kind of right and you're just spitting it out. So we put everything into this folder so that when you jump back and forth, you're not having to go from the PDS model going back out to the calculations folder to get to the drainage model, then going back into the drawings folder to go into the PDS to edit the ground model, and then you're not spitting something out into the CAD drawing, and then you're going into the CAD drawings folder. It's more localized. You have fewer folders go back up the chain, if you will. So the flows model is just right there because you're going to be doing changes to both of them at the same time as you go through it. Then this one is the road templates folder. So this is really useful, just like the buildups, just like those parameter files. There's a folder there, and it has all the road templates that typically get used. So when you do a road design, you are adding the curbs, you're adding footpaths, you're adding verges, you're adding all kinds of stuff to that road, and rather than every single time. And so the idea is so that you put a curb line that's attached to your road, or you put a footpath that's attached to the road, so that as the road design changes, maybe you change the camber, maybe you change the vertical alignment, or maybe even you have to change the horizontal path of it because the swept path doesn't quite work. If those curbs and footpaths and verges and maybe swales that run along the pond are not attached to the road, you'll have to offset them every single time. You'll have to raise or lower them accordingly, and it can just get right headache and really time consuming. So the good thing about PDS is you have these templates and you say, here's my road, right, I want to add a 25 mil curb. Bang, you select that, you go import template, choose a 25 mil curb, you hit your road carriageway on the left, on your right, bam, you have a vertical 25 mil upstand curb. And if that road dropped 200 mil, the curbs would drop as well. And then you say, great, let's add a footpath. So let's add a 2 meter wide, 1 to 40 footpath all the way along there. You go back into your templates, you choose your 2 meter footpath, you drop it onto it, great, happy days. Then you want to do a swale, go into this, and if you got one already created, you can just drop it right onto it. Now I've got mine for the more typical ones. So it's really easy when you bring your folder template in, because this will be set up. And the other thing is that there's the reason why I have this in the folder and also named to be at the top is because if you go back to this example that we have, there's 10 roads here. To have and insert all those templates onto those roads, you have 18 roads, 2 sides per that, so that's 36 at best. 18 times you have to go insert road template, and then it's going to have the drop down folder, and then you have to go and find it. Well, so you're going to have to do that 18 times at least, and then you're going to have times where you're going to have a 125 high curb, and then it's going to go to someone's their driveway, and then it's got to drop down at 25 mils. So you're going to have to choose that. So you're going to have to choose this a hell of a lot of times, especially if it's a big site like this. And if you had to go into it and look for that every single time down this long list of all these files, again, if I didn't have these 6 folders, we saw how many files there are. You'll be wasting time trying to scroll down that list to try to find that road template. So by having this folder at the top, everything's there. You can just go straight to it and you just grab what you need. So that's what that's there. Again, it's about saving time by grouping things and having everything in the same location every single time. So it becomes muscle memory mantra. It's very, very easy to do. Second lastly, we have this one. This is your model export file. So when you do a BIM level 2 compliant project, or sometimes if you're not, you'll get asked by the architect or structural engineer for the ground model to drop their building into it, or they want that ground model. So to try to export it out, you may have to export it out several times. Well, you just export it out and you drop it into here, because then it's easier to try to find it, because you then just go say, right, latest export files, this folder, and you just drop that in the Teams chat, whatever, to give to whoever, and they can go and get it. Again, it's having a consistent location to get that information, so they don't have to scratch their head trying to find it. And then it's great. They go, great, I'll go to that file, get the latest version, and off they go. You know, and because maybe there's like that other person is really good at converting it from the file export from PDS into a Revit compliant model, which I think is a DWG or something like that file, forget. But by having that location, they'll then convert it and they can issue it to everyone. So that file, that's where everything is always when it's the export the model out to everyone that they want. Now the last one, this is the superseded folder. So going back to those 6 files that we talked about previously, the DGM and the PDS files, the ones that contain the information to create your surface mesh model and the models that actually are the surface mesh. As they get up-revved, to help keep things straight, I take the old ones, drop them in the superseded folders, because I will save the model and the DG, and I will save the model and up-rev it as the design progresses, so that if there's major changes, I can go back to the previous one, and because maybe buildings moved back to the previous location, so at least doing this, you can go back into the other one, copy out the 3D information, the ground slab 3D lines, bring it into your current one instead of redrawing it. You know, or maybe there's a question about why is this information on this drawing like this. You can go back into the model and say, oh, this is why that information is that. Or maybe something's become corrupt. You can go back to that previous one, get some information. So there's handy ways to do it, of superseding out your models into this folder. And I do it when there's been a major change to it. Maybe a building's rotated or something like that. Or sometimes I'll just do it, I'll just supersede that file if I know that I spent week, 2 weeks doing a whole bunch of little changes to it. Then I will supersede it because I think to myself, well, there has been a big change in terms of design. There's been a lot of little changes to the design that I don't want to have to waste time redoing. So I'll uprev it, spit the old one out into the superseded folder, and I have that I can go back to. And so that's the 6 folder there. So that's the file structure. So you have your DBU file. That's just to recap really quickly. You have your DBU file that sets the design units for your drawing. You have your PDS file that contains all the information to create your DGMs. Your DGM, that's the surface mesh, as if you're out there walking on it, whether it's the existing site or your proposed site. You have your buildup files that has all the different pavement, all the materials, as if you're the contractor ordering all the materials to build the site. And then it has the pavement file. That's the file you'll be using if you're giving Joe Blow to say, go build that road. They know it's 100 mil type 1 material. That's all the paving that's going to go into it. So that's that one. And then you have all these road files. That's got all your road geometry information into it. And it creates one for every road you have. And then you have your 6 that I create. Your CAD import, so I can tweak drawings and sort them all out so I can get rid of all the useless information that I don't need, so I don't have it so cluttered. You have your PDS export file, so that's where everything goes that's been designed that you're going to give to someone to build. That needs to go into your manual drawings or your drainage plans, whatever. And then you have your flow folder. That's where all your drainage models go to do the design. And then you have your road templates folder. So as you attach all your curves and footpaths and berms and swales to your road, all your road templates are there in one group, so they're easy to find rather than having to scroll through everything. You have your PDS export file, so that's what you're going to give to someone to put into their Revit model so they can see this either the existing or proposed ground or their drainage to see how it interacts with the building. And then you have your superseded folder where you just, in an attempt to keep things tidy, you just move anything that's been superseded into that folder. So that's all the file and the folders that PDS creates when it's creating your projects. And those are the 6 that I use myself to help set things up, make it more easier. You can always add more folders to group things to further break it down if you want, but that's what I find is the most efficient. Been doing PDS for over 10 years now. I think maybe almost getting closer to 15 now. And my experience is this is the most efficient way, but there's many ways you can have it, but that's how I do it. So I hope you found this useful. Hope you've put any comments in terms of better ways to do it. Be interested in hearing about it. Anyways, until next time, bye.